my favorite thing is to watch one of my kids, be scared to try to hit a jump, or for Wyatt to try like a new combo or a pro set. Um, to watch them overcome that fear and then watch how happy they are when they actually overcome. And they always come back saying, "Oh, that was so easy. Like, I don't know why I was so scared to do it." But that's really what gets me going nowadays. Um, Kind of running national season after national season. A lot of the nationals can kind of run together almost like a Groundhog's Day. Um, it's hard to remember any sort of results from a year or two ago. So I think learning that the results don't really stick with you as much as like the progression does. That's really turned into the focus for our program.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode. David, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. You are the dad of somebody who recently got just a little bit of recognition here. So will you introduce yourself and tell us about who you're related to?
Yeah, my name's David Christensen. I'm Northwest apparel manager for Western Power Sports. A lot of people in the BMX community are probably pretty familiar with Fly. So I'm hands-on with Fly at most of the dealerships in the Northwest US. Been in the BMX scene on the national level now going on 8 seasons. We did a season prior, so this will be our ninth season in BMX. But yeah, I've got three kids. They all race BMX. I've got a little seven expert named Warren. I got a nine girl who's about to turn 10, named Eleanor. And then my oldest, who some people might be familiar with, is Wyatt, or Wi-Fi, they call him. But yeah, he's a 12X. He'll be 13 in January. He's got a killer BMX birthday that works out for him. So, but yeah, he just recently won the World One title out in Rock Hill. So he's definitely got quite a bit of recognition for finally getting his World One plate.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, some of those videos, I can't even imagine the level of emotion that goes through. So I guess speaking on behalf of a dad, what was the emotion like for you when he crossed that line in first?
Well, this year was kind of tough. I've been with him at Worlds since he was 7. We did our first Worlds in, I want to say it was 2018 or 2019, out in Belgium. So he was a real little guy. He actually got third that year, so he's been doing pretty well at Worlds since he was a little guy. But this was the first year I couldn't be there. Western Power Sports decided to have their national sales meeting the same week as Worlds. So I was there for my younger two to race on Monday, but then I had to fly out Monday afternoon. So I was actually sitting in a conference room watching some presentations and then watching Wyatt on a live stream. So, but pretty emotional to watch. I mean, I I basically ended my day after he won, and took the rest of the day off and went and grabbed a beer to celebrate the boy. But it was different not being around the people that um I'm normally around when something like that happens. So luckily my wife was there and she held it down, and I got a couple teary phone calls, and I mean my phone just absolutely exploded after he won. I probably got maybe 100 text messages from just people that have been supporting the boy over the years. So and they'd seen him get close a couple times. Like last year in Scotland, he was leading his main and made a mistake in the second turn and ended up getting third. So we've seen some heartbreak. He's crashed in the world's main before too. So we've definitely been on the roller coaster ride. So a lot of people were excited to see him finally pull it off.
That's so fun. Yeah, especially after all that work, all that adversity, right, is coming through, and not only having made it before, but having been so close, and then making some mistakes or crashing or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and this year was tough for the whole family. My mom passed away maybe 2 weeks before Worlds, and Wyatt was really close with his grandma. So he actually ran like a kind of memorial number plate to her in the race, and kind of dedicated the whole event to his grandma. So for him to suffer that big of a loss a couple weeks before the race and to be able to stay focused was pretty impressive for a little guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to be able to maintain that focus and to be able to, in some ways, maintain that motivation is really cool.
Yeah,
So
he said after the race he wished that she was there to see it, but we all reassured him that she was watching and probably helped him stay on two wheels during some of those rain races. So everything seems to happen for a reason, so maybe that was something that needed to happen for him to be able to ride the way he did.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really cool. It's exciting to hear, and like I said, seeing some of those videos, I can imagine that was just so much fun to celebrate and to be a part of, and to see. But I think one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about is that you are you're a dad of some awesome riders, and you have some riders that have pushed really hard at times, and then from what I've heard is that you have and then you have some of those same riders that at times have said, I just want to play around and have fun. So what does that look like? Because when I was talking to Kylan Johnson and Brecky Breck, basically they said that you'll have your kids that will show up at the track, and they'll go, oh, we just want to play around today, or we just want to mess around and have fun. And you're okay with that, is you're not pushing like, go out there and get another win, go out there and get another win. So what does your mindset look like surrounding some of that?
My younger two are definitely not as I'd say self motivated as my oldest. I think he enjoys the positive attention he gets from his results, and my younger two, they're still just so young. I mean, being 7 and 9, you have to realize they're at the end of the day they're just little kids, and sometimes they'd rather go play in the parking lot and build dirt, sand castles and play in the mud and play with their friends. My youngest is extremely social. And I think his favorite part of BMX is just getting to be around kids his age and getting to play. So while I have to peel Wyatt off of the track, a lot of times I'm looking in the parking lot for my younger two, to try to get them on the track to actually get some laps in. Um, but initially it was a push, trying to get them, dialed in the sport. And then over the years, as they evolved, you kind of have to evolve as a parent too. And some of the qualities that I think you need to, win or dominate on the BMX track, I think kids that are so young don't inhibit a lot of those qualities yet, having to, almost ride mean and, not be friends with the competitors you're racing with on the track. Whereas like my daughter wants to be friends with everybody all the time. And so I think it's tough for the younger kids to kind of grasp that serious mentality of, pushing really hard on the track. So I've pretty much backed off on the younger ones, and when they're ready to, if they want to make that commitment and ride with that, mentality that they don't want to lose, then, they'll eventually get there. But I'm in no way pushing them to, follow in their brother's footsteps.
Quick detour to one of our gold level sponsors, Luminex Neon, who has partnered with us to help accomplish the mission here at BMX Breakthrough. We're so grateful for their opportunity, and there's a special place, a near and dear place in my heart for neon, all things neon, whether that's on paper, whether it's shoes, whether it is a sign in a living room or a garage space, it doesn't matter. I love neon, always have, probably always will, and so neon signs create a unique statement piece. So if you're looking for that for your bike shop, for your garage, for your workspace, maybe it's for your living room, Luminex Neon offers exactly what you need. So with unparalleled craftsmanship and endless design possibilities, Luminex Neon is your go-to for brightening up any space. You can follow the link in the description and use our promo code BMX Breakthrough 10 in order to get 10% off of your order and to explore everything that Luminex Neon has to offer.
I found, like, even with Wyatt, like, we definitely had some tough years where he wasn't being as successful, and it came down to him needing to make the choice himself, of what path he wanted to be on, and if he wanted to, work hard enough to be a champion. And um it has to be a self-driven choice. And so with the little kids, I don't think they have that mindset. There's definitely some little kids that are, savages from day one, and they don't like to lose. And but I think for a lot of the kids, they just want to be kids and go ride their bikes and have fun.
What does that distinction look like for you as a parent? Because you just defined, like, there's the difference between the younger kids that aren't as self-motivated as Wyatt is. There's Wyatt who's motivated, but he had to figure out at a point if he wanted to, how in this he wanted to be, and he had to
Right.
figure out his level of determination and all that. What is it like in, like, from your perspective? Because there are a lot of, there's that terminology of factory dad. There's a lot
Yep.
of factory dads out there that are living vicariously through their kid and are so focused on, no, you're going to go out there and you're going to try your hardest. If you're not trying, we're not going to pay for you. We're not going to, why are we wasting our money? But it sounds like you let your kids figure that out for themselves. So what does that look like for you?
Um, I think I have a different perspective than a lot of parents because I come from the professional, like, superbike world. So I've seen and worked with, Red Bull teams and Rockstar teams, and, athletes on the highest level. And for me, it really, um, just recently clicked for me. I really want to watch my children race at the level where it's more than just close family members that, are interested in their racing. That seems to hit about 16, when and the sport starts really getting serious. Like on the UCI level, um, I believe you can start racing juniors at about 15, 16, and that's when you actually start getting some outside draw, and people are, really interested in what's going on. So I think I figured out that in order to keep the kids in the sport for a long time, they had to be enjoying themselves. They couldn't be, devastated after every race, which is a struggle we're having right now with my daughter. Like, I had to I hate to say yell at her, but we just did a national out in Kamloops, and she got a second place on the first day and was being a pretty poor sport about it after the race, and didn't want to talk to her friends and interact, and was just had a pretty bad attitude. So I mean, I definitely had words with her after the race, and it wasn't about her results or anything. It was just about the way she was treating her friends after the race, and just the attitude that she had. So um but yeah, I think my kind of evolution started when I realized that, um I hate to say that, like, young kids winning national titles is a novelty, but at that age, and I guess being exposed to worlds a couple times and how the Europeans do it. They chase progression. Like in the Euro Cup series, they don't even let kids under 13 go for a championship. If they do Euro Cup rounds, they're racing for a trophy and that's it. They don't keep season points. So I think being exposed globally has really kind of shifted my paradigm towards development standpoint opposed to a results driven standpoint. So it's fun getting results, but at the same time, I tend to praise my kids more nowadays if they learn a new skill, or do something for the first time. Like my favorite thing is to watch one of my kids be scared to try to hit a jump, or for Wyatt to try like a new combo or a pro set. um, to watch them overcome that fear and then watch how happy they are when they actually overcome. And they always come back saying, "Oh, that was so easy. Like, I don't know why I was so scared to do it." But that's really what gets me going nowadays. Um, Kind of running national season after national season. A lot of the nationals can kind of run together almost like a Groundhog's Day. Um, it's hard to remember any sort of results from a year or two ago. So I think learning that the results don't really stick with you as much as like the progression does. That's really turned into the focus for our program. And then just really trying not to burn the kids out. Um, I, I I see a lot of kids at really young ages on, kind of Olympic training programs, and and if it works for some families, that's awesome. Just for our family, hard training and weightlifting and stuff like that has never seemed to click or resonate with the kids. Now that Wyatt's starting to get to that age where he's got testosterone and he's hitting puberty, then weights are gonna you know take a place in the future. But we've really tried to limit the training, and I don't over race them. I mean, I every time those kids go on the track and they're racing, I think it's high risk. So I think staying healthy is a big part of the sport. My youngest is, I mean, at 7 years old, he got life flighted from a BMX track. He was just jumping a little tabletop during a clinic, and a gust of wind caught him, and he ended up landing on a handlebar and lacerated his spleen. So he got to take a helicopter ride from our local track up in Port Angeles to Seattle, where he was basically in an induced coma for a couple days while his internal organs healed. Um, so, I mean, anytime your kid can, have a good race and come off the track in one piece, I mean, that's a win. That incident definitely changed my perspective on, what a successful race weekend is, and that's typically now if all kids are in one piece and had a good time. Um, but yeah, I think focusing on the progression and um, yeah, just trying to make sure the kids are making memories, and as a family making memories together doing BMX has been the goal.
That's really cool. I think the focus on progression there is one that really stands out to me, because I think um, like you said, it can so easily become about the results, and just because your results are good doesn't mean that you are actually progressing, because we know that week to week or even national to national you can race sometimes the same kids, but sometimes you can race different kids. And so just because you were able to win on one day doesn't mean that you were necessarily progressing. And so being able to focus on them and talking about the celebratory feeling, the excitement that you get out of watching them progress and hitting a jump for the first time and clearing something or whatever skill it is that they're developing, that's really cool.
Well, and I think that keeps them motivated too. I think after a certain point, the novelty of winning a big trophy or a plaque, starts to wear off, and Like most of my kids won't get trophies anymore. They go get the saver stamps at the nationals because I mean, we've had to basically pack trophies in the garage that have been there for years and they're covered in dust now. And obviously, it's not a big deal for the kids, you know, after the day of winning the trophy. So I think the skills and the confidence they get from the progression sticks with them. Whereas, you know, a plastic trophy ends up dusty. And I've seen countless older families, you know, donate all their trophies after, you know, a couple years because they are just getting dusty in the garage and might as well donate them to a local track where, you know, another kid can be excited to have them. But yeah, I think that focus on the progression keeps the kids more motivated, and it's something that's lasting opposed to results you typically don't remember after a year or two.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, I think that so that's a direct tie-in to what is the value that you see from BMX? Because you said you're going on your ninth season and you spoke to wanting to keep your kids in. So you would love to see them race on that next level where more people than just family are interested in them. But what is it about BMX that you see is so valuable?
There's a couple things. Probably the thing I love most about BMX is you can keep your entire family together. We've done team sports. The two boys played flag football um, maybe 6 months ago, and my daughter was doing drama where she was Annie in a musical. Um, and what I found is that on a Saturday, I'll have three kids that need to be in three different locations. So it tends to split the family up. Whereas with BMX, I can take all three kids to the same place. They all have their circle of friends that, you know, they hang out with. Um, and we get to stay together and experience everything together and make memories together as a family, whether it's in the car traveling, you know, 10 hours to a race or flying somewhere, or, you know, getting the opportunity to go overseas and, you know, kind of blow these kids' minds with, you know, different cultures and architecture and stuff. So I think the memories that are possible with BMX are pretty tough to get with other sports because it's going to be very rare that if you have kids in different age groups that they're going to be, you know, playing at the same school or on the same field or even in the same state, um, doing that sport. So in terms of keeping the family together, I think BMX is priceless. And then I think BMX teaches a ton of life lessons for these kids. They have to learn how to lose. They have to learn how to be gracious and humble winners, you know. They learn that it doesn't always go their way and they get to learn with disappointment. Um, and they also learn the value of work ethic. Like I sometimes when my daughter or son are really upset they didn't get the results they wanted, you know, I'll just simply ask them if they, you know, if they put in the work that they felt, you know, kind of deserved the results they're hunting for. Um, so it's kind of you kind of have to earn the right to be that upset after a race, you know, if you gave it everything you had getting ready for a race and, you know, um were motivated to put in the work, then I definitely understand, you know, being extremely disappointed. But if my daughter's been building sandcastles out in the parking lot while Wyatt's been practicing, and, you know, Wyatt gets results and she doesn't, and she's heartbroken over it, um, I'll definitely I'll just ask her, you know, if she felt she did everything, you know, possible for her to, you know, try to win that race. And most of the time she realizes that she spent maybe a little too much time building sandcastles, and she, you know, if she did go out when Wyatt's, you know, going out doing sprints or whatever it is he does, then those results might increase. But that's a decision that she needs to make. And, you know, I'm not going to push her to stop being a little kid just to go get better results. So, often, you know, I joke with Wyatt because typically when there's an older sibling and a younger sibling, the younger sibling ends up being faster than the older sibling. So, um, like my youngest son, he has glimmers of greatness, but he's just a goofball. So, being the youngest, he's my little, class clown, and he gets attention by being funny. And so when he finally decides that he wants to, take it serious, if he ever does, he'll probably end up being faster than Wyatt, because he's had an example and a mentor to look up to since, he could walk. So, whereas Wyatt basically blazed this trail for our whole family. And we were just kind of along for the ride, because we never expected, any sort of results like what he's been able to get over the last few years.
I can totally relate with the dynamic of not expecting that, because going into it, it's you don't expect to see your kid on that level. You can hope, but the expectation isn't quite there of, oh, okay, we're gonna go in and we're gonna dominate in the same way.
Right.
But being able to have that, and I like how you talked about pointing or turning the question around when disappointment comes in, because it's easy to blame. We do this culturally, we do this personally. It's so much easier to blame the extenuating circumstances on our result. And so for you to turn that around to your kids, and I have young kids too, and I try to get them to understand that same thing. And it is funny, sometimes you get the rebuttal of like, yeah, I did everything I was supposed to do. I did what I was supposed. And then when they finally like break down and start figuring out, okay, maybe I didn't. Maybe it
Right.
wasn't all there.
No, 100%. I mean, it's holding themselves accountable for, what they're getting out of the sport. And so, if the focus is fun, then I don't think they should be as, heartbroken over not getting results. Um, and like with Wyatt, he absolutely loves riding his bike. You can tell it's just essentially his happy place, so I don't expect my younger two to be my oldest. They're all extremely different, and any parent will tell you, how different their kids are. So I've got, three kids with three completely different personalities and three birthdays that are very different. And at this age, birthdays play a big part of your success in the sport. So, Wyatt having a January birthday, it's an excellent birthday for, the national season and worlds. He essentially gets to race the same age group all year, whereas um, my youngest is an October birthday, which is really tough for grands. So he sees Wyatt, doing really well at grands, whereas he is racing much older boys at grands. Where my daughter has a birthday in the middle of the year. So um, at this age, the birthday plays a big part, because 6 months age difference is a huge deal when they're this little. So I definitely know that a big part of Wyatt's success has been his birthday. So um, I think realizing that that plays a huge part also helps set realistic expectations for, the results these kids are going to get.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Oh, so I was curious too. Obviously, you guys have fallen in love with the sport of BMX. What was your introduction to the sport?
It's kind of funny story. We moved up to Washington maybe 10 years ago from California. We're one of those, California transplants that everybody loves. But I was literally trying to find something to do with the kids during the winter, because up here it gets really rainy and dark and wet. And so it's real easy to put your kids on screens when it's dark at 4:30, and kind of keep them in the house, and then the next thing you know, they've been on screens for 3 or 4 hours, and it's just not the route I was trying to go. So one of my competitors actually, I was working with him one day and asked him, what do you do with your kids during the winter in Washington? And he mentioned to us there was an indoor BMX track maybe 40 minutes from our house. So at that time, Wyatt was 5, and we just took him down to the local BMX track. And he did the little, intro to novice clinic where they gave him a loaner bike and, kind of got him used to the gate. And he was hooked. He actually won his first ever novice race. And you could just kind of tell he had some racecraft in him. I think he made a last turn pass in his first novice race to win, and a light bulb kind of went off like, oh, we might have something here. um but yeah, he progressed really fast in the novice ranks and moved up to intermediate. And um at that time I was kind of the only one in the family that was into BMX. It was pretty much Wyatt and I think Eleanor had just been born. So I would have her like in a snuggly at the track, and then she eventually got on Strider bikes. But for the first season or two, it was pretty much me trying to figure out the sport. And being an ex motorcycle racer, of course, the first thought my parents had, and my wife probably even were that was that I was trying to live vicariously through my little 5-year old. And instead of me racing, I had him out there racing, and I think they were a little concerned he was going to get hurt at such a young age. But um, once they saw his progression, I think he won, his state championship his first year. Maybe it was his second year as an intermediate, but um, definitely the results he started getting motivated us to dive even deeper into the sport. And with the younger two watching him, kind of progress and how much fun he was having, they instantly wanted to join the sport too. So it made it cool. But yeah, it all started with one of my competitors just giving me a heads up. Shout out to Ryan Hemans. I think his son used to race BMX, and he had told me what a nag plate was at some point. And I know his son had earned a nag plate at some point, and I just thought it was so cool that these little kids had a national level that they could compete at. And so after Wyatt's first, local season, we just on a whim went to a national. And that was back when the little kids could wear, clips, and you had 5-year olds and 6-year olds clipped in. And we didn't let him use clips. So he did his first national pretty much against everyone else in clip shoes. And he was wearing these little green Incredible Hulk Vans, and he was able to get some podiums. And so yeah, no, it was pretty cool just jumping, head into the whole sport and starting to learn from other people.
That's cool. I think speaking to the way that you got into the sport is the invite. And I think the invite is so important. And just like anything, is like that's how most people's introduction is. And, we talk about word of mouth when it comes to just about everything else, but that's how people get into sports. And so, your son is experiencing, your kids are experiencing something that they are together in, and also that
Yeah,
they are good at in a way that they may not have had you not been invited in that moment.
100%. It's huge to feel welcomed in any community. So to come into a new sport where you don't have a clue about the rules or um the points, it can be very intimidating. And what we've found in this sport is people are very welcoming. um Especially tracks, they get you hooked with the $5 race fee and the red line bike. And we always joke and say that red line is the gateway drug for BMX, to get you hooked. But before you know it, you can go as deep as you want in the sport, but it can quickly go from $5 locals and rental bikes to flights around the world to watch your kid race. So it can definitely suck you in. It's an addicting sport for sure. I think probably more so for the parents than the kids. But yeah, it's been amazing experience being welcomed into a new community, and then growing in that community, and then starting to be recognized in the community for what your kids are accomplishing.
So something that Kylan Johnson had mentioned to me is that you guys took a period of time off during a season, and was it to work on starts?
It was mostly jumping.
Okay.
We've got kind of a local legend out here, Pee Wee Lee, Brent Lee. A lot of people know Pee Wee, but I've always tried to, you know, pick people's brains and figure out what they think is important to focus on. And a huge thing with Pee Wee was the ability to ride dirt jumps. Um, he, you know, swears that the skills that you learn riding trails and doing dirt jumps translate directly to BMX. So um, when I think COVID was first starting, we took probably, I think, an 8-month break and just got the kids mountain bikes and dirt jumpers, and instead of going to the track, we started hitting the trails pretty regularly. And Wyatt, you know, took to the jumps really well. And what I like about that scene is pretty much any dirt jump spot you go to, there'll be a sign on a tree or posted somewhere that says "No dig, no ride." And basically, if you're not going to clean up the jumps, or help shape the jumps, or clean up the dirt area, then you shouldn't have the right to ride that spot. So I think that mentality of learning the trails, and also meeting a lot of people that aren't focused on racing. They're literally just out in the woods, and there's no cameras, and there's um, no results. People are just purely riding for the love of BMX and the progression that they're getting, hitting bigger and bigger jump lines. And um, it definitely set us back a little bit in BMX because of like the starts and like the ability to pack ride, being comfortable going elbow to elbow. We definitely lost that after maybe 8 or 9 months in the trails. So when we did come back to the sport, it basically threw Wyatt right into the fire, whereas he had been able to hole shot quite often and kind of right out front. It threw him in what I call the meat grinder, which is, mid pack in a BMX race. And I think we did 19 national races in a row, and he didn't win any of them, which was, pretty shocking for him because he did win. I think he won NAG 1 when he was 6 years old. So he had been, at a higher level with his results already. So to go from being consistently out front, and now being mid pack and not getting the results and not getting the trophies, it definitely, I say it forged him, because he had to fight back to get to the results he was getting, and it took quite a while. And there was a ton of disappointment and a lot of drives home from nationals where the energy wasn't the same as it used to be in the car when he's celebrating a great national weekend. So um, I truly believe kids in the sport have to learn how to lose. A lot of kids have really early success, and it's really easy to get used to it. Whereas if you watch elite men or the Olympics, it's almost a coin flip, with who's gonna get the first place or the gold medal. And so like we've seen Nick Kimmon, who's an Olympic gold medalist, get knocked out in motos at Worlds. And so if it's if it's okay for an elite man, or woman to who's dedicated their life to the sport to not make it, and they're okay. I think it's important for these kids to learn too that um, you're not always going to win, and so you just need to be happy with the effort you put out. And if the kids are happy with the effort they put out and it matches the effort they put into going into the race, then you know um, I think they need to be satisfied with their results at that point.
At this moment, I'm going to interrupt our episode, our current interview, briefly to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsors that have backed us financially in this project, in our mission, and give them a huge thank you. So at our gold level, we have Luminex Neon and Marketing Breakthrough. At our silver level, we have Sound Cedar Lumber and Bicycle Thieves. And at our bronze level, we have Pro Start Gates and Justin Shepard, Title Examiner. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for backing us. If you are looking for help with any project that you're working on, if you're looking for some cool things to do, go ahead and check out the links to their websites in our description and go ahead and visit them, show them some love. We are so appreciative for their support. And if you are interested in getting involved in a local track, helping out, or sponsoring a local track, sponsoring the BMX Breakthrough project as a whole, please reach out at j@bmxbreakthrough.com. You can also go to our website and find out some of the needs of tracks and some of the things that we are working on at bmxbreakthrough.com. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Let's dive back into this conversation.
There is so much to learning how to lose, and obviously some of us like some people are more aware of losing, like it's become there's not that early success, and so like my 6-year-old, he's not he's gotten first a few times, handful of times. We've been racing for 3 full seasons now.
Yeah.
And he's not used to being out front. I think he's got 4 wins. And I was talking to somebody the other day about it, and they said, yeah, I feel like kids that have early success don't do as well as long
Yep.
as kids that have that slower success. And as a parent, like, it is fun watching your kid win, and there's some pieces to that where you're excited to celebrate with them. But definitely seeing them have to struggle and push through in order to get to that victory. And like you were saying, Wyatt had some of those. He was able to hole shot. Had some successes. He had that neg 1 plate, and then to take that time off and then come back as a 8, 9-year-old. That's when it starts getting much more competitive, and then having to fight through that to where he's at now at 12 years old. Like, that's a struggle.
100%. I mean, I often, I'll tell the kids, use the sting, to kind of fuel the fire. And I feel if you haven't had that sting, there's still kind of a question mark over what your career is going to be like, because a lot of kids that do get that early success, when they do get thrown into the fire, it can tend to have the whole program go off the rails. So um, to try to get to that next level and be in the sport for a long time, it's not a sprint of a career. It's a marathon of a career. So as a parent, I think it's my job almost to um, try to motivate them, to find ways to stick with the sport even when they're not having success. And it's definitely been a different experience for my younger two. Like it definitely took my younger two a lot longer to progress in the sport. So having 3 kids in the car after a race weekend, and they've all gotten different results. One kid's down on themselves, one kid's riding high. It's easy for me to ground Wyatt, and make sure that, he stays humble, and whereas at the same time trying to uplift and motivate a kid that's not getting the results that, they want. So I think having the 3 different perspectives with the 3 different kids, and realizing a lot of it is birthday, and and what we're finding now, because it's new to me, having a kid that's getting testosterone, and we're just at that preteen stage where it really makes a huge difference which kids are hitting puberty and which kids aren't right now. And so Wyatt grew probably a foot and a half. He was never the big kid in the class. He never was able to use his size for position, or he had to rely on bike skills or, racecraft. But within the last, year and a half, he's turned into one of the bigger kids in the class. So he's a lot of his success right now, I think, is because he's getting testosterone earlier than some of these boys he's racing against. And so you have to take that into respect too, that results tend to be circular. And so these kids he's beating right now, because he's bigger and stronger, and they're sticking with the sport and they're developing their bike skills, that testosterone and that puberty is eventually going to hit, and they're they're coming for him. So he definitely
Yeah.
he definitely's got to stay on his toes, and you can't rely on being bigger and stronger than everybody, because there's always going to be somebody bigger and stronger in every sport. So I think the developing the bike skills has been paramount, because that's what's going to get you to that next level, is the bike skills and kind of the love of the sport, opposed to being bigger or stronger than the other kids in your class.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the dynamic there too of, you've got these kids that are coming in, and they are changing. And so this year it might be easier, we'll say easier, but not easy, but it might give Wyatt some advantages. Next year he may have to, some other kids may pass him, or
Yep.
you get to a point where it's like, oh well, I win these races, and then you start to back off just a little bit, and then these other kids start developing, and next year they could be passing him, and then he's having to work again, in the same way that after you guys took that 8-month break, like that he's having to come back and he's having to fight his way through. And I think that's good, and that speaks to the dynamic you were mentioning earlier of, it's not just about learning how to lose well, it's learning how to win well too. Like, there's a lot of different dynamics and things that this sport teaches kids, which, as parents within the sport, we can see it, and we absolutely love what it teaches our kids.
No, 100%. And probably our biggest accomplishment in the sport is, I think, the reputation that Wyatt has gotten from being, a humble champion. Um, I got complimented a couple times this weekend, because Wyatt actually took the weekend off and just cheered his brother and sister on, because they had pretty small rider count up in Canada, and it wasn't going to help him at all nationally. So he just did the practice days, 2 days, and then one of our friends' bikes actually got stolen. So Wyatt loaned him their bike for the weekend. So one of his buddies was riding his bike, and Wyatt was cheering people on and helping out in the pits. And he he likes to help out USA BMX. He's been in the national scene for quite a while, so he's made friends with a lot of the officials. So you'll see Wyatt running moto sheets back and forth from the office to staging, and he just kind of has a pretty cool personality in the pits, and he's really approachable. And in life outside of BMX, he typically doesn't even mention that he races BMX, or he doesn't bring up his accomplishments or anything like that. He'll tell you he likes to fish or golf, or he typically will lead with some of his other hobbies. So he I don't know. I think that's been our biggest accomplishment in the sport, is just having a kid who has had, pretty profound success at such an early age, but is able to keep his ego in check. And, you know, he likes to give back quite a bit, and you'll see him at a local gate practice coaching some younger kids with their feet in the gate, or just giving advice and trying to give back a little bit. But it's pretty self-driven from him. I think we've kind of set the expectations of how their behavior is supposed to be before and after a race, and how they treat people. And that seems to motivate other families, I think, to try to emulate, because I think it's harder to be a good winner than it is to be a good loser. um, especially with social media and Instagram, and it's real easy to get trapped in the needing to post up your results and your trophy slips after every race to validate your weekend.
Yeah.
And we've kind of backed off of that quite a bit, and we tend to just post up that we're having fun and the kids had some great laps. And um, so I think shifting that focus on the event itself and the experience instead of the results has helped the kids stay pretty grounded in the sport.
That's neat. Well, even that dynamic that you had just mentioned of Wyatt not racing this weekend, and like there's the dynamic of it wouldn't really it's not all that advantageous to him. It's a lower rider count, all that stuff. But the other side of it is he loves being on his bike. And so for him to take a back seat to riding his bike, and he got to do some practice, but to take a back seat, and I mean, sometimes there's that FOMO when you're sitting there on the sidelines and all your friends are racing, but for him to be there and be cheering on his friends and his siblings and to be encouraging people and trying to help out as much as possible and lending a bike and all those things is like that speaks a lot to the character of your son, and just that that racing and probably more importantly winning isn't everything to him. It's cool, it's fun. Even you mentioned his hobbies, like yeah, he talks about his other hobbies, but who doesn't really lead with BMX, is that it's super fun for him. And if you can keep it fun, and it seems like you've done a really good job of helping your kids to just keep BMX racing and and riding in general as something fun, and we can go and compete, but at the end of the day we are having fun. And so I mean that's really cool for you as a dad and for your kids. That's really cool to hear and to see.
Yeah, and I mean, I give him the choice at this point. I mean, I asked him if he wanted to race this last weekend, and he said he just wanted to hang out. And most of his closest friends are in the BMX scene. He does have a few school friends, but being on the national circuit, you travel a lot, you miss a lot of birthday parties that you're invited to. So his happy place when he's not on the bike is in the pits with his other BMX buddies. That and I find this sport, the kids are so similar. A lot of them may not excel at team sports. They seem to have a more free kind of personality with the bike riding and whatnot. So I think he finds a lot of like-minded kids in the BMX world that he gravitates to. And he loves hanging out with the older boys, the 14 and 15-year olds. And to me, it's huge when, a 16-year-old comes up to him after the race and tells him he did a great job. Or and I think that sticks with the kids quite a bit. So when he has the ability to, kind of hang out with the older boys or, kids in his group, and he can help them out, it's almost as fun for him, because he does race a lot on the national circuit. I think we did 30 national days last year, which is an entire month of the year at a track racing nationals.
Yeah.
So it, in a way, it's also to help prevent the burnout. Um, we don't race as much as a lot of families, which I think surprises people. I would rather take my kids to a gate practice than you know race them over and over and over again, because when you're racing, you're going for results. So that is the focus when you're racing. I mean, you're having fun also, but at the end of the day, you're, lining up in the gate against somebody, and you're trying to see, who's gonna have a better day. Whereas at a gate practice, you can really focus on the fun, and there's zero results and zero pressure. So, like locally, we really focus on practicing a lot more than having to hit 3 or 4 local races in a week. Instead, we'll go and hit three different gate practices, and then maybe we'll race a local on the weekend. But I think a lot of kids get over raced. And that can, this sport's so mental, and it's such a big deal having confidence. And so if your kid is, doing really well over and over again and you're getting those good results, it's good for confidence, but at the same time it's a double-edged sword. If you're racing your kid over and over and over again and they keep getting results they're not happy with, I think it can be detrimental to their confidence. So um, if my kids are feeling good on their bikes and um, having fun at gate practice and stuff, that's fine for us. We don't need to, be chasing trophies over and over again. So I think just focusing on seat time and track time and still being in the scene and still supporting the local tracks at that level, as opposed to, trying to hit four local races in a week. um, I think it's good for the longevity with them. That way they do get excited when it is time to race because they haven't raced three times this week. They've done a couple practices and now they get to go see if their skills are progressing. Um, but for some families it works, like we've got good friends that, race as many locals as possible. And I do agree that seat time and, that muscle memory of battling into the first turn is important. And um, so whatever works for your family, if racing, a lot works for that kid, then go for it. And if that gets their confidence up. But at the same time, I also think racing is higher risk than doing a gate practice. A lot of times in a race, kids can see red and they can, try moves they wouldn't normally do, just riding the track. So I think the risk of injury increases during a race, versus just doing like a gate practice. So not to keep my kids safer, we don't race as much, but I do think that injuries create, you know, setbacks that can last, months. And if you're sitting in a cast watching racing for 6 months, opposed to getting a, ton of laps in doing practices and racing locals once in a while. I think it's important for the kids to stay on that progression path, and injuries are the quickest thing that can derail that. So um being a coming from motorcycle racing and, having a ton of injuries personally, we definitely try to keep risk lower with, maybe a little bit less racing and a little bit more practicing.
I like that. Well, and also too, the point that you made earlier was speaking to the dynamic of progression, and and practice lends itself a lot more to progression, and tends to lean away from the results side, that you were talking. So everybody has their different philosophies and their different strategies and their different routines and regimens, and but I think for you, I completely understand why you lean more heavily into the gate practice, because it does allow kids to work on themselves, to work on focusing on what they want to do and all that stuff. So I think that's really cool. I appreciate that, and I think that's obviously it seems to work well for your family thus far.
Well, and what I found too at the gate practices, that's when the kids from the different age groups commingle. Um, that's when Wyatt can go talk to a kid who's 13 or 14 years old and ask them questions. And like we've tried coaching in the past. We've had, some ex pros or current pros work with the kids, and they're doing the, Excel document, workouts and stuff like that. But what I've found is the kids tend to learn more and be more receptive in kind of a less structured environment. If my son can, we're lucky to have Sean Day locally, who's, one of the absolute rising stars in the sport. And so if I can get Wyatt riding with Sean at a gate practice, I feel he learns more in that practice than we've ever, accomplished with any sort of rigid coaching. So when you get the kids, they'll ride halfway through the track, and then there'll be five of them being boneheads and sitting on a double before the second straight, and they're all just sitting there kind of, BSing and talking. I think that's when the true progression really happens, because they don't have any outside pressure of a, ex-Olympian or a coach who their parents are spending money on, and they feel pressure that they need to perform because of that coaching. So, um, what I found is if you can find a kid, 2 or 3 years older than your kid that can do things your kid can't do, um, have your kid use them as a mentor. And it seems that gate practices that really creates the environment where there is no pressure and they are having fun, playing bike, trying to uh, do skills and challenge each other, and they really push themselves, I think, in their little friend circle, um, to try to level up, in BMX. Whereas I think when you go to races, a lot of the kids are focused on themselves, trying to get themselves ready for the race. So I think there's more, you know, commingling going on with the older kids, and it's easier for the kids to ask for help or tips, in a less kind of pressured environment that racing creates.
Well, I agree. And honestly, this conversation is inspiring me to go to practices because you're spot on, and it alleviates so much of the pressure. Because I think of the last 3 years that we've been racing is that we've really been traveling for the majority of it. So if we're in town and we're near a track, it's like, okay, well, let's go to the race because I want to experience what the track is like on a race night, all those things. But there is a side of that where there's a pressure, and there's a pressure that I put on myself or I put on my kids of like, okay, we've got this much time. Okay, do you want to get another lap in before it's time to race? All those things. We're showing up at tracks, we're practicing for just a little bit, and then we're going racing, and then we're never at that track again. And so we really haven't pressed into the gate practice dynamic, but now that we're based somewhere, it's really challenging me to think, okay, maybe we need to do that because then my kids can go out and they can talk to people, and there's not that pressure on anybody else of, oh geez, the gate's going to drop pretty soon,
Right.
we're gonna start racing, we gotta. And it takes away the stress from my wife and I as we're getting the kids ready and all that stuff, because
Yeah.
go up there, ride as much as you want, then take a break, then go ride if you want to. You're good.
Yeah, and then they find their, little circle of buddies that they go and do laps with, and they can push each other to try new things, and there's not that, ticking clock of motos are starting in 10 minutes. And some tracks are really good with letting kids ride the track after racing, but we've also had tracks that, as soon as the last gate drops on the races, they close the track and everybody's out of there. So um I think if you do have a local race where the TO is there for the kids and opens the track for an hour after racing, then there's less of that pressure. But some of these tracks seems like they open the gate, they take your money, and then they run through motos as quick as they can, and then they close the track. And for me, that's not the best environment for progression.
Yeah, man, this has been helpful. This is, I was excited about having a conversation with you, and this was not what I was anticipating to get out of this conversation quite as much. So this is so helpful.
No, right on.
Yeah, just, I mean, so much of what you've talked about is just energizing for me because I have such a hard time watching some of the factory dads that are so pressuring of their kids and wanting to make sure that it really stays something that's fun. I want riding to be fun. I want one of the things that I talk about a lot is that 20, 30 years from now, I want my kids to love riding their bike. I don't care if they're racing. That would be really cool if they were still racing. But ultimately, I want them to love riding their bike, being outside, exercising, enjoying, life on two wheels. And so I don't want to push it. And I think we all see these parents that are so focused on the results, and they're pushing their kids to ride in a certain way that it starts to take the fun away from it for kids.
For sure. And I mean, I definitely, when I first started this, didn't have a grasp of kind of the bigger picture. I mean, I definitely fell into that, factory dad role probably more than I'd like to admit. And every once in a while you get sucked back into it when, a result you didn't expect happens, or maybe you see your kid not trying or riding to the ability that, they can ride. So, um, it's it's definitely tough to step back from that and kind of do a self-evaluation as a parent and see if maybe your kids aren't getting the results because of something you're doing, so just as your kid needs to evolve in the sport, it's a big deal, I think, for the parents also to evolve with their kids. And if you do want to see your kid, having fun, like, eh, with Wyatt, a lot of people, say, Olympics and, elite pro and stuff like this, and maybe he'll get at that level. But even once you get to that level, there's really not a ton of opportunity at that level, to make a great life for yourself. So a big focus on, like, Wyatt is being as likable as he is and as humble as he is. A lot of people like him around, and for me that's huge. Coming from the, pro motorcycle side, you see a lot of kids that do make it to that top level, but their careers are typically pretty short, either due to injury or funding, or so even if you do make it to that elite level, um, there typically needs to be a backup plan where either you, if you do love the sport and you want to stay into it, you need to find a position in the industry. Um, so for Wyatt, the focus has not been to, make the Olympic team and be an elite pro to make a living. It's been to love the sport enough and to network enough and to make enough connections over the years doing this that maybe he could land a position someday with a bike manufacturer, or because that's typically where these elite people end up after their careers, is working for an organization or a bike manufacturer, because they have a big name. um,
Yeah.
but typically you're not going to make a living racing. It's really hard to do that. I mean, I can count on one hand, the elites that I think are, probably making a really good living by just racing their bike. And typically it's from outside sponsorship, not typically even sponsorship in the industry. So I think if you can set realistic expectations, if you do have a kid who seems to be on that path, that, even if you do make it, it's really not a feasible way to, make it through life. And um, if you do love the sport, you can find a role in the sport where you're still involved with it. But maybe your check is not coming, as a big cardboard check at the end of the day, but it's coming from, a bike manufacturer, or like UCI, or like one of my big mentors is Jerry Bradford. And I think his son was a five-time world one, but he's the team manager for LDC. um, but I think his son works for UCI now. His son's like a big wig in Japan, I believe, running the
Um,
Japanese UCI BMX program. And if anybody's watched the Japanese lately, they are absolutely on the gas with action sports, and BMX being one of the biggest. Uh, like my daughter raced, the girl that won my daughter's class at Worlds was a Japanese girl, and it just seems like their progression over there is, huge. And I think a lot of that is probably to do with Jerry's son, taking the reins over there. But that's my goal for the kids, if they do love the sport, to find a home in that sport somewhere. And it typically won't be as a racer making money off cardboard checks.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to be able to encourage that fun and that excitement, and to foster the passion for it, I believe, is a big part of that, and to help them find something that is fulfilling, that they're excited about.
Yeah, and I mean, just watching a lot of the pro motocrossers and the pro, superbike racers towards the end of their career, they typically wind up in the industry somehow, because
Yeah,
they truly love the sport and they love being around it and they love the culture. So if we can just instill that in the kids at a young age, then, um, you know, I think that can motivate them to stay in the sport longer, and maybe get a degree that complements the sport too, and a marketing degree and a great BMX career look good on a resume when you're applying for a job in the bicycle industry. So I
absolutely.
think those can complement themselves instead of just it's fun to chase the dream of being an Olympic champion, or thinking you're gonna win the pro title someday. Um, but I think the U.S. had 2 spots this year for the Olympic team, so out of everybody in the United States, you're going for 2 spots. So the reality of that situation is pretty bleak. Even if you are riding at a amazing level, there's typically always somebody bigger, faster, stronger, that might have some natural ability that no matter as hard as you work, you might not get to that level just because they're genetically gifted. Or so I think grounding the kids, and we can still chase the dream and go for it. But I think to have an education and other life skills other than riding a BMX bike fast is paramount to having them in the sport for a long time, and staying motivated.
You're gonna get fired from the Factory Dads Club for saying that.
uh my wife got me a tool bag like 2 or 3 years ago, and it says, she got it embroidered and it says Factory Dave on it, because I mean, I want to say when Wyatt was 6 or 7, you could have found me chasing him around with an umbrella to keep the sun off him, and if it's 100 degrees out, I'd have the squirt bottle keeping him cold, like he was like some little factory rider. So I've
That's
definitely been
awesome.
teased with that in the past, but I think for our own, stake in the sport, it took some introspection and realizing that, these kids have to be having fun or they're not going to want to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I think that's so helpful, so useful for us to hear, like, as from the perspective of a dad who has a child who has seen some success in the sport. That's really cool to hear. So I definitely appreciate your wisdom and your insight on the subject.
Oh, right on. No, glad I can add some perspective. I mean, a lot of people have preconceptions of other people's programs, and they assume you're whipping your kid, or starving them if they're not getting races won. So I think we surprise a lot of people kind of with how passive our approach is. um I mean, we definitely set high expectations with behavior and effort, but in terms of results, if the effort's there, and I've had a lot of really good dads to mentor me with older kids. I mean, Mike Wagner's been a huge help for me with focusing on the progression and not the results, and having fun. And we typically say the kid having the most fun will get the best results. So I think that shows when the kid's not scared to come off the track because of the, you know, tongue lashing they have waiting for them in the pits, or um, I think it definitely, having this perspective of learning from people that have been doing it way longer than me, being 9 seasons in, it feels like I've been doing it forever. But um, like Jimmy Buchanan, who's the team manager for Full Tilt, which Wyatt rides for, he's been doing the sport for 50 years. Like he used to race himself in world championships in the 70s. So I think to see these guys that have been doing it so long, and kind of the mellow approach they take, and not as focused on the results and being soft spoken, and um it's definitely helped shape the way that I run my program. It's definitely not been something I came in with the sport inherently. It was something that had to be taught to me. So if I can help anybody else with their program, I think it's just paying it forward, which is huge in this sport. If you do have a kid that's getting success, it's typically not because of what you did. It's because of all the people in the community that helped you get there.
Well, it's cool to hear just your perspective and your willingness to take direction, your willingness to be intentional, to be introspective, like you mentioned, and I think there's huge value in what you've been able to do and what you've been able to create, and the excitement and passion that you've been able to help foster. So, yeah, David, I'm so thankful for getting to have a conversation with you and being able to hear some of your insights and your wisdom that you've developed and found over the years. And yeah, thank you for sharing with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. I love racing. I mean, I didn't want to push my kids into the motorsports world because of all the injuries. And I mean, I've seen, you know, death at a young age from, some of these motorcycle racers, and it definitely, I think, has shaped the way that we run our program. And it's about keeping the kids safe and keeping them happy, and um, you know having them learn these kind of tougher life lessons that they might not be learning if they weren't in such a competitive sport, because BMX is extremely competitive. So it yeah, no, it's been a fun ride so far, and hopefully we can, keep it going. But if I get asked a lot, if Wyatt wanted to quit tomorrow, how would you feel? Um, and I'd definitely be disappointed, just because the talent he shows, and he definitely is on a path to being able to ride at that next level. But at the end of the day, it's their lives, it's their names on the result sheets. It's not my name on the result sheet. And I think a lot of parents can feel like their kids are an extension of themselves, and so their kids' results are their results. And so like if the kids have a bad weekend or didn't put the effort out, I mean, I'll remind them that that's their name on the sheet, it's not mine. So I mean, if you're happy with your results, I need to be happy with your results. But it's not a reflection of me, or I think the way they treat other people is a reflection of me. So
Yeah,
we're pretty strict on that respect. But um so as long as they're treating people, you know kind, and trying to pay it forward in the sport, then it's really hard for me to, kind of have a bad weekend.
that's cool. That's awesome. Well, David, thank you so much. I appreciate the whole conversation. I appreciate what you're doing, and super excited for Wyatt and what he's been able to accomplish over the last few months. And um yeah, just thankful for your time and the conversation.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely connect at some point down the road, but I want to be mindful of your time. So thank you for with them being on the show, sharing with the listeners, and sharing some perspective on what it is that you guys have done and what it is that you work on within your program.
No, I appreciate you having me. It was fun getting to, talk BMX. I mean, we can I can talk BMX for hours, so it's been fun getting the word out on some stuff, and I really appreciate your time.
Cool. Well, thank you and have an awesome day, and we'll talk more soon.
Definitely.
Cool. Thanks, David.
Yep, have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.